This is the Biz News Podcast, one-on-one conversations with experts in business and personal development.
We don't really know about that cat, but it's probably safe to say your dog loves you. Another thing that loves you is money. Well, so says financial advisor and author Julia Carlson, who's just published a book to that effect called Money Loves You. Ms. Carlson is founder of Financial Freedom Wealth Management Group, which she says promotes a holistic wealth management philosophy. She joins us in this episode of Biz News Interviews to tell us more about it. Julia, before we get into the nitty-gritty of this, let's set the table a bit for our viewers and our listeners, if you would, by telling them a little bit about yourself and how you ended up where you are.
Sure. So thanks for having me. I am Julia Carlson. I like to say I'm an entrepreneur because I love the idea of building a business. I'm also in financial services. So I learned about financial services and investments as a kid, actually, with my parents and grandparents. Very uncommon. I thought it was normal that everyone talked about stocks as a family, but no, that doesn't happen. And so I found my career at 19 going to work for a local bank, and they had an investment department, and I just fell in love with it. And so I got fully licensed. I became a financial advisor. And then at 23 years old, I left the bank and started my company, what is now Financial Freedom Wealth Management Group.
And you have now written a book that has a kind of a contrary title. Tell us about it.
Yes. So my new book is called Money Loves You. And yes, that is a bold, big perspective title. It's meant to jar all sorts of emotions and responses. And yes, I thought about changing the title, but I really felt guided that this was the title of this book. So I'm excited to share more about that.
All right. Why does money love us? Because I can't imagine you'd find a lot of people on the streets saying, money loves me? Come on, give me a break.
Ooh, but can you say that to yourself? Like, money loves me. Doesn't that put you in a different perspective?
Perhaps it does, but it makes me feel like Scrooge McDuck in his vault, counting his pieces of gold.
So it doesn't say I love money. And this book is nothing about that. So I think the idea is, we all have perspectives and beliefs around money. And a lot of those beliefs were framed from childhood, from what we were told from our parents and caretakers, what we learned from our teachers. And so what I have found is we don't examine that. And trust me, over 25 years of being an advisor, I've heard people say, I hate money. Money is the root of all evil. Money stresses me out. I don't want to do anything with money. I avoid money. All these things, all these beliefs. So if you can believe one, and that feels so true to you, the thought is you can believe the other. And who do you think is going to do better with their money? Someone believes that money loves them, or someone that believes that money's out against them? So
How do you suppose so many anti-money thoughts and sayings have abounded over the years?
Well, I think it's unconscious, right? So, as kids, we may hear we can't afford that, or this is too hard, or rich people are bad. Uh, the money is the root of all evil. Like, those are all things we hear at church, in our home, expect in relationships. Like, I think, I know, not I think, financial topics are one of the main reasons of divorce. And so I think we come into relationships, and if we're not talking about our money stories and our beliefs around money, I think we can trigger our partners and vice versa to get into these loops that's just not helpful with money conversations. And so, and once you're in those loops with a loved one, a partner, it's really hard to find the exit ramp and oftentimes can get worse before it gets better.
Well, we've gotten the title of the book. Tell us what is in it and who is your target audience?
Yeah, so I feel like what's in it is the first, good 2/3 of the book is all about examining our relationship and our thoughts around money. And so it's helping the reader to dig down. I call it mind the subconscious and really figure out what is those core beliefs. You may have symptoms of a problem, whether it's spending more than you make or hiding things from your spouse and not paying attention to how you're spending money. Like these are all symptoms. We have to be willing to dig down and say, okay, what's the root of this problem? Where did it come from? And then how do you actually turn that experience into something that's good? Like, how do you find the gift out of that? Because that's the key to unlocking how to build from there. So that's definitely piece that we talk about that in the book. And then the last half of the book is the actual practical guidelines and practical advice on what to do. And I think the big thing from my book, from other personal finance books, it's a little bit of choose your own adventure. Like there's not a right and a wrong way, but it's how do we empower the reader to really ensure that they're following the right path for them.
You must have drawn on some personal experiences to put this all in a book, correct?
Absolutely. Yes. So I've made all sorts of money mistakes. I have hidden shopping from my husband. I have done all sorts of crazy things that, had guilt in the moment, but then how do you learn from that, transform it into, okay, this served me at the time, but I know that's not very healthy. And how do I make a new decision moving forward?
So, what tips can you offer our audience?
Well, I think a very basic thing that I think a lot of us get hung up on is budgeting. So a lot of people will say that's where you start with being a good steward of money is how to budget well. But most of us have this like reaction to budgeting of restriction, what I can't do. It builds like a scarcity lack mindset, and it doesn't actually want us to lean into being excited about tracking our money. And so in my book, I talk about the anti-budget. Yes, the anti-budget. I like to, the name I have for it is value-based cash flow planning.
Actually, anti-budget is easier to understand, maybe.
Well, the idea behind it is that we all spend money on things that are important to us. And so I think it's really important to do things that bring joy into our lives, that if we're all about lack and restriction, then that's not going to be very exciting for us. And we're going to tend to avoid it. So the whole idea behind the anti-budget is, number one, how do we have a new frame and a positive attitude looking at our money that actually pulls us into wanting to do that? And then how can we look at it potentially with a new lens? And so one of the exercises is, if you look at your bank account or if you charge things on a credit card, look at your credit card statement. And number one, can you put an emotion to the expenses? And what I mean by that is, oh, I went out to dinner with good friends and we had the best dinner. And that was a lot of joy that brought me for that experience. So that was an okay expense versus something that, I don't know about you, but I can go into any big retailer, especially with 3 kids, and spend $300 or $400 and be like, what did I spend money on? When I see that charge, I'm like, I don't even remember what it was. And to me, like, that's annoying. I don't want to have very many of those expenses. So the idea would be, how do you have intentionality to how you spend money and make sure that that's aligned with your goals and your future self, which would be saving for your future or getting out of debt, whatever those financial goals are. Is that a priority in your spending? Like, can you see that value showing up in what you do with money?
How has writing this book changed anything that you have done in your life about money?
Mm. So a lot of what I wrote in the book is, I've been tracking my money since 2005. I actually have the process that I lay out in the book is exactly what I've done for the last gosh, how many years has it? Almost 19 years. And so it's actually brought some more intentionality of, okay, if this has helped us get to this point, this can help others do that as well. And so for me, it's like feeling really on purpose and bringing that intentionality. If I'm going to teach others to do this, then I got to make sure it works for me. And so as my husband and I have followed this process, it really does work. And I think it's that confidence I have in helping others do the same.
Well, you mentioned 3 kids. I suspect you were talking personally there.
Yes.
How have they been able to benefit from this book and your teachings, or are they too young?
No, they're not too young. They're teenagers. One's actually, the oldest is 21 and just got engaged. So we're helping them navigate the finances together and think through that. But I have a fun story. So my middle daughter is 17. She is on a state board for future leaders of America, and she was tasked with at a fundraiser to sell pins for a donation of $100. So she had to go like writing pins, right? Like it's not worth $100, but how do you get people to pay that? And so like she's been around me as I've written this book, but she has not read the book. Uh but she was, you know what I did, Mom? I would go around and tell them, money loves you. If you buy this pin, you give money and money comes back to you. So she was getting the grit, the insights from the book from just being around me. And I think it's that abundance mentality of giving and receiving. Money is meant to flow in and out. It's not something that we should be really stuck and obsessed about. So,
What's been the reaction to the book?
oh man, uh, it's really fun to see people talk about it on social or in Amazon review or do a post about it. And it's a total stranger to me. Like I don't know these people. So that's been pretty exciting to see the response. It's funny because I'll get people that are real literal, like money is not a person, money can't love me. And I'm like, well, just read the book, see what happens. And when they read the book, they're like, oh my gosh, this is such a great book. But maybe they're still hung up on the title a little bit. So I kind of think that the title kind of points to where the work should be done, meaning if it's triggering you, then maybe lean into that more and figure out, okay, why is it triggering you? Could there be a change in perspective there that it's helpful? So
Is there a sequel or a plan to continue writing other books?
yeah, I think that I, I think as my experience grows, you asked before, who's this book for? And I think that as a Generation X and as there's a lot of stats with a lot of money moving in the next 10, 20 years from the senior and the baby boomer generation down to my generation and the millennials. And so that Generation X is really like, if I said that's who this book is for, And I also feel like there's a business owners often, I feel like I have a book for business owners, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So as a business owner myself and building a business, those are my favorite clients to work with because I understand they have all these competing priorities. They want to make sure that they're ensuring good benefits to their teams and their employees, but they also didn't go into business to be broke. So how do they build wealth in and outside of their companies? So what I have found is business owners they tend to look at themselves last. So it's how do we make sure that you're reaping the benefits of being a business owner as well. So
What would you like to add before we end the interview? And I've got a question after that.
okay.
What would you like to add that we haven't talked about?
I think that a lot of this book is understanding our own individual worth. Like there's a quote I have in the book that says your self-worth must be bigger than your net worth. And what I have seen is people that do come into sudden wealth where they inherit assets, from family members or even lottery winners, right? We see so many times that wealth, slips right through their fingers. They're just not good stewards of it. And I think it's because they didn't become who they needed to become as someone that generates and creates wealth. So this next generation of wealth, if they don't examine their own internal wealth and their ability to be good stewards of money and grow in that, then that's how we lose generations of wealth. And so it's important that the generation that has the money now actually help this next generation in education and understanding, who they become because of that money. Because that's often what's missing in that next generation. So, and that is that feeling of worthiness without the money. And so those are, I talk about that in the first part of the book. And I really think that the practical stuff is kind of the easy, like, here's the things that you do, but why don't we do that? Why do we get in trouble with money? Why don't we do what we should do? It's because of all the mindset and the subconscious and the self-beliefs. So I really hope that people do the exercises in the book, like do the work that actually grows them as an individual, that they can be responsible and good stewards of money.
Do you have a website or another way people can get more information about you in the book?
Yes. So my website is juliamcarlson.com. So I had to put the M in there because there's another Julia Carlson out there, but I'm the money one. And my company is financialfreedomwmg.com.
You've been listening to the Biz News Podcast. We welcome your input. Send your email to editor@biznews.com. That's BIZGNUS.com. Thanks for listening.